So you've just rolled up your first Mothership character. You're looking at your sheet and one thought is probably screaming in your head. Am I doing this right? My character seems really weak. Your best stat is a 40. In a game where you have to roll under that on a 100-sided die, a 40 doesn't really inspire confidence. You're thinking, how am I supposed to succeed at anything? And if you're coming from a game like D&D, it's easy to think the game is just broken or unfairly punishing. But what if I told you that having bad stats is the entire point of the game? The secret to loving Mothership isn't learning how to raise your stats, but learning how to stop relying on them entirely. I'm going to walk you through the 3 psychological shifts that will turn your weak character into the ultimate horror survivor. And the first, most important shift has absolutely nothing to do with rolling dice. All right. The first and the biggest mental hurdle is right here. In a game like D&D, your character sheet is your first resort. You want something, you find the relevant stat, and you roll. In Mothership, your character sheet is your last resort. The rulebook itself says to roll as little as possible, defining stats not as your basic abilities, but how you act under extreme pressure. So think of your stats not as your character's baseline ability, but as the calculated risk you take because you've exhausted all your clever options. And the only thing left to do is let the dice decide your fate. So what does that actually look like in practice? In a D&D style game, you might get to this tunnel and say, I want to see what's making that noise. I roll perception. In Mothership, the Warden will look at the group and ask, what do you do? One player might say, okay, I'm not sticking my head in there. I pull out a chem light, crack it, and roll it down the corridor. Another player could add, yeah, good idea. And I've got a different one. I'm taking out my explosives and detonator. I'm setting a small charge with a 10-second timer and rolling it down there right after the chem light. Whatever's in there can either run out into the light or deal with the consequences. See, the game isn't asking you to be strong, it's rewarding you for being clever. You're solving the problem with your ideas, not your stats. That is the core of this shift. And this is why that shift in thinking is so critical. It empowers you, the player, to be the one solving the problems. It turns the game from a passive experience of rolling dice into an active one of outthinking the horrors you're facing. Low stats are no longer a penalty you're stuck with. They're a constant reminder to be creative, to be clever, and to engage with the world on your own terms. That's not just more effective, it's way more fun. By the way, if you're finding this shift in thinking helpful, feel free to hit that like button with your foam gun and completely entomb it in hardened resin. It really helps the channel. Okay, on to the second psychological shift. The second psychological shift is all about changing your definition of winning. In many games, you win by defeating the monster. In Mothership, the story is about the scars you collect along the way. The game is built on a simple, brutal principle. Survive, soul, save. Pick 2. Victory is almost always incomplete and it comes at a terrible cost. Your low stats guarantee failure, but in Mothership, a failed roll isn't a dead end. It's the engine that powers the horror. Every failed check is another turn of the screw, another drip of fuel into your ever-increasing stress. And that stress is what leads to panic, where the real horror unfolds. Imagine the ship's life support had been knocked offline. You have minutes of air left, and you're frantically trying to reroute the emergency power. The Warden calls for a mechanical repair check. You roll, and you roll 99. Double nines. A failure. A critical failure. In a traditional game, that might just mean the life support stays broken. The situation is bad physically for your character, but mentally, it's fine. But in Mothership, a critical failure is a direct mechanical trigger for psychological horror. First, the Warden describes the consequences. A massive power surge explodes from the panel, frying the system beyond repair and plunging you into darkness. Then, because you rolled doubles on a failure, the rules state you must make a panic check. You now have to roll on the panic table. Maybe you get rage. You fly into a blind fury, smashing the ruined console and causing all nearby crew members to gain stress. Or maybe you get catatonic. The shock is too much and you simply freeze, becoming unresponsive while the air continues to thin around you. Do you see the critical difference? The failed roll didn't just make the situation worse, it mechanically inflicted a psychological breakdown upon your character. The story didn't just escalate, it spiraled into personal character-driven horror. That is the engine of the game. That's the heart of the second shift. A failed roll in Mothership isn't the game telling you no, it's the game asking you, how much worse can things possibly get? This system turns your low stats from a weakness into the most interesting part of the game. You're no longer afraid of your character failing. You're terrified and thrilled by what their mind will do when they inevitably break under the pressure. The real story is in the scars, the trauma, and the moments of pure panic. And trust me, those are the moments your table will be talking about for weeks. And that is all powered by those bad stats you started with. So if your stats aren't your superpowers and failure is the engine of the game, what are you supposed to rely on? Where is your power as a player? This brings us to our third and final psychological shift. Your most important stat isn't a stat at all. In fact, it is your inventory. In Mothership, a locked door isn't a challenge for your strengths. It's a problem that can be solved with a crowbar or an explosive charge. Your gear is a list of verbs. It's a toolkit of creative solutions in a game that encourages you to roll as little as possible. Your inventory is what allows you to take direct, guaranteed action in the world. So let's put this into practice. Start thinking like a survivor. You hear something moving in the vents above, but you don't know where it is. Don't ask for a roll to pinpoint its location. You pull out your bioscanner. You quietly sweep the device across the ceiling, using its ability to detect signs of life to find the exact location of that non-human creature completely silently. You've just replaced a risky roll with the ability to get some life-saving information. Or you're being hunted by a network of smart-linked drones. Don't ask to roll for combat against an overwhelming force. Pull out your radio jammer, you activate it, and suddenly the drones go dumb. Their connection's severed. They revert to a simple, predictable patrol pattern, and now you can easily sneak past them. You've just replaced a deadly firefight with a clever action. Now you need to cross a chasm that's too wide to jump. Don't ask for a risky strength or speed check that could lead to a character falling to the death. Take out your rigging gun. You fire it across the gap, anchor its microfilament line, and create a makeshift bridge. You've just replaced a potentially fatal roll with a guaranteed safe crossing. This is the loop. Look at your inventory first, always. And that's the final piece of the puzzle. This is how you reclaim your power in a game that's designed to make you feel powerless. When your inventory becomes your primary tool, your low stats stop being a frustration. They become irrelevant. Your character isn't defined by their slim chance to succeed on a roll, but your ingenuity as a player to find a solution that doesn't require a roll at all. This empowers you to be a proactive player and not a reactive one. You're no longer waiting for the Warden to call a check. You're telling the Warden what you're doing. That's the secret. Stats were never a punishment. They were an invitation to play the game in a smarter, more engaging, and ultimately a more terrifying way. So let's bring it all together. To go from a frustrated new player to a hardened survivor, you just need to make 3 shifts in your thinking. First, your character sheet is not a list of your superpowers. It's the last resort you turn to when your clever ideas run out. Second, the game is about attrition, not victory. Failure isn't a bug, it's the engine that creates most of the memorable moments of horror. And third, your most important stat is your inventory. Your real power comes from your creativity with the tools that you have. So the next time you create a Mothership character and you look down at that sheet full of low numbers, don't feel discouraged, get a little scared. That's the point. The game isn't asking, how will your hero win? It's presenting you with a puzzle. And that puzzle is a much more interesting question. How will you survive? If you got value from this video, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel, and subscribe to find how you can get the most out of your Mothership games. And for the comment below, I have a question for you. What is the most creative way you've ever used a piece of gear to completely avoid a roll? I love to read your stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.